The great names focus on winning and ride the ragged edge. They are in a constant search for the elusive victory. In a season that has been the definition of parity, Bobby Rahal is the points leader, but he has yet to win a race. 6 races run this year. 4 times Rahal has finished second. Consistency and tenacity have given Rahal the edge. The ever-steady Rick Mears is second in the points. This has been a strange year for the 3-time PPG champion. He led the opener at Australia until a bizarre accident relegated him to 3rd place. He hit the wall in practice at Indianapolis for the first time in 14 years of racing at the Brickyard. But then he recovered to take the pole and a 4th Indy 500 crown. The Flying Dutchman Arie Luyendyk holds 3rd spot in this year's championship chase. Never afraid to straddle the fine line between success and danger, Luyendyk claimed victory at Phoenix earlier in the season. But with his team now in financial trouble, a rough path lies ahead for the Dutchman. This could be the last race of the best season of his career. The young John Andretti occupies 4th place in the points. The Australian opener was a microcosm of this season. While mishaps plagued the frontrunners, John Andretti was smooth. He stayed clean and clinched his first IndyCar victory in the very first race for the Hall DDS team. A week ago in Detroit, the unusual continued to prevail. Late in the fight, Mario rear-ended a safety truck, and then moments later, son Michael ran afoul of the same incident. Emerson Fittipaldi took the checkered flag, further tightening the points fight. 6 races, 6 different winners. 200 miles ahead, another checkered flag waits. What else lies in wait on the road to victory in the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200? ESPN, the world's leader in motorsports television, presents Speed World.
Get huge savings.
Of the magnificent Mount Hood. It is the final day of Portland's annual Rose Festival. At Portland International Raceway, right at the edge of the Columbia River, it's time for round 7 of the PPG IndyCar World Series, the Budweiser G.I. Joe 200. And today it's brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil. By Suzuki and your Suzuki dealer who has the ride you've been waiting for and the financing to get it. And by Goodyear, the unanimous choice of every single team that races in the CART IndyCar Series. Hello and welcome to the Great Pacific Northwest, Portland International Raceway, where it's a massive crowd here today. They expect another record, and the focus is on the IndyCars. Hi, I'm Paul Page, and this is one terrific racing circuit. It's produced some great races in the past. As a matter of fact, the closest finish in IndyCar history occurred right here at Portland. And today, well, look what predicts this race. 6 races so far, 6 different winners. A points fight that is incredibly tight, led by Bobby Rahal, followed by Rick Mears. And there is some other significance here today. As we start this race, Mario Andretti will start his 350th IndyCar race. His son Michael, well, he's been struggling for the weekend. In fact, he's going to start in his backup car because they broke the chassis during the qualifying runs earlier in the week. There's another man to watch here, Al Unser Jr., the defending CART champion. He's had his problems, Derek Daly, and to add to them, he comes to this race with the flu this morning.
Well, that's right, and something I've been curious about, Paul, over the last couple of races is the performance, or lack thereof, of Al Unser Jr. Now, don't get me wrong here. When I think of Al Unser Jr., I think of one of the world's finest race car drivers. I expect him to be fast everywhere. But he wasn't a factor in Detroit. He wasn't a factor during practice or qualifying at Milwaukee. He wasn't really a factor at the Indianapolis 500. And one of the reasons I think for that is last year his engineer was Alan Mertens. They had a great rapport together. Alan Mertens knew what Al Unser Jr. needed in the car, knew what he wanted, knew what to give him. And that gives a driver great confidence. Well, Alan Mertens is also the designer of the new Galmer Indy car. He's back in England building that car. So Al Unser Jr. now has a new engineer, John Dick, a man he has the utmost respect for. but it takes time to build up that critical rapport that a driver and an engineer needs to extract the maximum from each other, and hence the maximum from the car. So I think now, Alonso Jr. said this weekend, he's beginning to feel that rapport for the first time, which is so necessary.
We'll definitely keep an eye on Little Al. There's another great story, the front row. The Penske team. Rick Mears broke the track record and held the pole position right until the last lap, when he was eclipsed by his teammate Emerson Fittipaldi, who now has the pole. Let's go to the front row and Gary Gerald.
Well, Paul, Emerson Fittipaldi is right over there. Right down here in the Marlboro car is Rick Mears. Rick, a quick question before this one gets underway. Everybody at Portland always concerned about fuel and fuel consumption. How much does it impact strategy, and can you really race?
Well, it impacts it quite a bit, but you can race. That's part of the race. So the guy that figures that out the best, maybe he'll be the one home.
Well, that's certainly going to play a key into the outcome of this one, Paul, as we go back now on pit road and we check in with our colleague, Jan Beekes.
Thanks, Gary. As Paul mentioned at the beginning of the show, Mario Andretti is about to make history by starting his 350th IndyCar race. Mario, does it feel any different on your 350th as opposed to your first?
No, I guess I'm certainly used to getting into these things. So it's just it's another race, and I just hope that it's a good one for us, obviously.
Okay, we wish you the best of luck. Paul?
All right, here at Portland, 1.9 miles around a 9-turn road course. It requires very careful balance for the race car. Here's today's tip from the cockpit, and Danny Sullivan.
Well, turn 3 and 4 to me has always seemed one of the more important sections on the track. For whatever reason, whenever I go quick through there, I get a quick lap. This is a section that's a little bit funny. It's got 2 apexes, 2 clipping points. You'll see the curbing down there. When you come into it, you enter kind of early. You touch the early apex, the early clipping point at the curb right there, and then you hold a tighter line all the way to the second apex. Now from there, you then let the car go out. This is done in 4th gear or 3rd gear, depending on which gearbox you have. If it's a 6-speed, it's 4th gear. If it's a 5-speed, it's in 3rd gear. It's very important to carry your speed through there. There's a lot of G-forces that are generated in there, and when the car's working good, the front end stays in very nicely, and you just hang it out all the way around. In an ideal situation, when you brake, everything shifts and goes forward, and you feel kind of a dive onto the front, and that gives you a great confidence in the grip on the road and everything, that you're stopping in a very good way. Then when you transfer back onto the throttle, it shifts and sits back down at the rear. On a modern race car, though, you don't want too much of that pitch back and forth because it upsets the balance of the car. One of the reasons that this section between 3 and 4 and 5 is so important is it's one of the longer sections right there to stay on your throttle to pick up some speed. Obviously, the most important corner is the one leading onto the longest straightaway. But I think in this section, you're on the throttle, you can make up so much time by having a very quick car around this section.
Danny Sullivan will start this race from the 3rd row. There's the points leader, Bobby Rahal, as he waits with the rest for the command to start engines. And to give it, the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Tony George.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Fittipaldi on the pole, and so much at stake here today because of the exceedingly tight points fight in the PPG IndyCar World Series, and so many with just a great deal to prove. Mario Andretti is 350th start, but he's not won for 3 years since Cleveland in 1988. Al Unser Jr. had the flu this morning. Danny Sullivan had a touch of the flu yesterday. It seems to be going around. And of course, Fittipaldi, his wife Teresa, is not here. She is at home in Miami awaiting the birth of their next child. The grand champion Emerson Fittipaldi, and a look over Michael Andretti's shoulder. We're set and ready to go. All of the Indy cars have indicated that their engines have started, and we're ready to roll out on the pace laps as we are ready for 200 miles ahead in the Budweiser G.I. Joe 200 at Portland. It should be a terrific race. Stay with us. And here Portland, the Indy cars are rolling on the first of 3 laps leading up to the green flag. So let's take a look at the starting grid. The starting grid is brought to you by the Die Hard battery, now with more power when you need it most. On the pole, it's Emerson Fittipaldi with a new track record. He's the 1989 winner here at Portland. Alongside is his teammate at Penske, Rick Mears. His best finish here was 3rd. The second row on the inside is Scott Pruitt. This is his 2nd start at Portland. And to the outside is Michael Andretti, the defending champion of this race. The 3rd row on the inside is Al Unser Jr., who won his very first IndyCar race here in 1984. And Danny Sullivan, the 1988 winner of this event with Alfa Romeo power. The 4th row on the inside is Mario Andretti, a back-to-back winner here in 1985 and 86. And Bobby Rahal, the current points leader, who won this race in 1987. The 5th row to the inside is Eddie Cheever. He has a trio of 3rd-place finishes on road courses, his best IndyCar finishes. Arie Luyendyk is to the outside. He may be driving his last IndyCar race today. The 6th row on the inside is John Andretti, who won the season opener in Australia, and Mike Groff, the former Indy Lights champion. Inside the 7th row is Scott Brayton. His best career finish of 5th came here in 1987. And Jeff Andretti, the leading candidate for Rookie of the Year honors. The inside of the 8th row is Canadian road racer Scott Goodyear and Tony Bentonhausen making his 2nd start here at Portland. The 9th row on the inside, Ted Prappis. He scored a 6th at Long Beach. And Hiro Matsushita of Japan. In the 10th row, Didier Taze, who's driving for the leader card team, and the great A.J. Foyt. The 11th row on the inside is Guido Dacco. A 12th in 1989 is his best IndyCar finish. And Jeff Wood, his first race here. The 12th row, the lone car of Dale Coyne, who hasn't raced here since 1988. Interestingly enough, in the first 6 positions, 3 different engines represented: Alfa Romeo, Chevrolet, and Cosworth. The weather today, well, it's partly cloudy right now, though the sun breaks through from time to time. A nice, comfortable 68 degrees. But look at the bottom line. There is a chance of rain here. The teams will definitely put that in their calculations. Now let's go to Gary Gerould.
Paul, in the Penske pit, a familiar face is missing. Roger Penske not here. Only the 2nd time in nearly 20 years that he hasn't been in the pits for one of these IndyCar races. Nigel Bennett will be on the radio to Rick Mears today. Roger has a previous business engagement, and he's missing it. And the other time that he missed an IndyCar race, when he got married back in 1973. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
In the high-tech world of IndyCar racing with radio communication, they still use the traditional pit board, which are set up here on the wall ready to go now. But just like in other professional sports where they use 2 types of communications, and there was 2 people on the sidelines making the calls, they do the same thing here in IndyCar racing, so you don't know which one to believe.
All right, they now work their way on the 2nd of 3 laps leading up to the start of this race. 104 laps around this track. 1.922 miles is the length of the track. 9 turns, 6 to the right and 3 to the left. Here are the engines in the race today. By the way, we'll be talking about Cosworth a little bit more because their development engine is very, very close to making the racetrack. Looking at the chassis in the race as well. Well, of course, Roger Penske has the front 2 rows, or the front row, with 2 chassis. Lola dominates the situation here. There they are, 15 Lola cars. And, of course, that lone True Sports entry, the All-American car, one that, Derek Daly, you're looking for a great deal out of.
Really, it's a very ambitious and a major gamble for a team the size of True Sports to design and build their own car. But this car, made in America, we've seen that touted many times, is a very good car. It might be a great car. A lot of people think here, after he qualified 3rd, that if he had as much horsepower as some of the other cars have, it might have been on the pole.
Let's take a look at what this circuit here at Portland International is like. First natural terrain circuit of the year. Very tough. One you really have to figure out. The Indy cars, unlike some of the others, use a chicane down there in the middle of the straightaway to try and slow them down, or their speed into turn 1 would be awesome.
A lot of people would like to get rid of that chicane. It has been good. It has caused problems, but basically they still use it. They have to make do with it.
Off the final turn, the front row comes aligned. This crowd, over 118,000, come to their feet, ready to watch the start of the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200. And there's the green flag, and Rick Mears and Emerson Fittipaldi as they come 5 wide, and they touch, coming down toward the chicane. And look, as Andretti moves up to the front of the field and battles for the lead. Boy, surprised that they made it through on that one.
My word, what an aggressive move we saw by Michael Andretti. Squeezed down the inside. Rick Mears smack, went outside Emerson Fittipaldi. Very, very aggressive move by Michael Andretti.
Michael Andretti leads the race, coming through the pack on the first turn. He is followed by Emerson Fittipaldi and then Rick Mears. But Michael, driving his backup car, he's had some trouble here. They spun the primary off the course, and the bouncing damaged the engine mounts, and they said they couldn't do anything with the backup, with the primary car. So here he is in the backup car, and he's being chased by the two Penske cars as Fittipaldi closes in and uses every inch of that track. Look how he goes over those speed bumps.
Every inch of the track, and as you say, the curbing. This is one of the few tracks you can drive over some of the curves here. We just saw Emerson do it, but he's in pursuit of Michael, the ever-aggressive, always aggressive Michael Andretti.
On the front stretch, Rick Mears lays back and is now accepting a challenge from Al Unser Jr. with Scott Pruitt just behind. But Little Al is proving that he's in this fight too.
Little Al catching up. Oh, Scott Pruitt has a look down the inside of Little Al. See what Al did? He moved over to block the line. Defensive driving. Nice protective move by Al Jr.
Little protection of the line, but look at Scott Pruitt as Scott moves right up behind Al Unser Jr.'s car. And Scott Pruitt is trying to give chase. Right behind them is Arie Luyendyk. Michael continues to be the leader of the race. Bobby Rahal is just behind Luyendyk as they've completed now the first lap in a race in which fuel will be absolutely critical. It has in all of the years past. And what that means is that there is just enough fuel to make it to the end. Making it to the end is important, but also finding the exact lap on which to make your fuel stop is also critically important. And Scott Pruitt, back after that terrible accident last year, in this True Sports All-American entry, Budweiser car, Steve Horn and the True Sports team wanting to prove that there's plenty of good American technology that can build and race Indy cars as well. So that's quite a venture. On board with Arie Luyendyk.
This is turn one. This is the double apex turn 2 and 3 here. See Luyendyk dabs the power. One gear change down. Trying to follow Scott Pruitt. Trying to get close enough. Not close enough to make a pass though.
So Arie Luyendyk continues his chase of Scott Pruitt. Boy, what a start we saw. And we've got him pretty well as he chops the wheel there. Let's take a look at this start again, Derek.
Now watch what Michael Andretti does here. He moves to the right of your screen. Now look, Mears is in his way. Bang! Hits Mears, moves him out of the way, and continues. Look at this move around the outside of Emerson. Outside or inside for the left-hand part of the chicane.
Boy, just shouldered his way through it. One time I was counting 8 wide on this straightaway. I don't think I've ever seen that before. There's Al Unser Jr. Little Al runs right now in 4th place, then Luyendyk, then Pruitt, and then Bobby Rahal, the points leader.
And
as Luyendyk managed to get around Pruitt.
Did make the pass on Pruitt. Now, Pruitt, they say, lacks a little bit of horsepower here. Now Bobby Rahal chases Scott Pruitt. This is back in section corner 1, 2, and 3 again. Rahal, you see, hear him dab the power on, off, on, off. Now he's on the brakes.
Let's just listen carefully as we take this lap with Bobby Rahal.
Change gear here. We look at that number on his steering wheel, 37.5. That refers back to the fuel situation we mentioned earlier on. Now look at this curve. Bang! Right up over the top of the curve. Everybody does it, so you can't gain much, but you really have to use that curve because it is the fastest way through that very fast left-right section.
The Quaker State onboard camera bringing remarkable views here from Bobby Rahal, also from Arie Luyendyk, and from the leader of the race, Michael Andretti. Michael Andretti leads it. He has about a second and a half now ahead of Emerson Fittipaldi. Rick Mears runs in 3rd, then Al Unser Jr., then Arie Luyendyk, Scott Pruitt, and Bobby Rahal. Right behind Rahal is Mario Andretti, and then Danny Sullivan, Eddie Cheever, John Andretti, and Mike Groff as we ride with the leader of the race, Michael Andretti, with a spectacular move, shoulders his way up through the front of the field on the very first corner, right on the green flag as they go 8 abreast. And now Michael Andretti trying to overcome some terrible luck that he has had both last week and throughout the qualifying this week, is in the lead of the race as he comes onto the main straightaway here at Portland International. Well, Michael Andretti is out in front. Fuel will be a critical factor. The weather may also play a part. We'll be back with more from Portland. Rahal, the points leader. He's never won this year. Looking desperately for a win, but still he's in a very comfortable points position, 10 ahead of second place Rick Mears.
I'm sure he hates people constantly saying a comfortable second place or a nice conservative run, because really the wins have been so close. I mean, Detroit within a couple of car lengths of winning, but Rahal, he knows what it's like to be successful because he's won many races in the past, but I'm sure those second places are a tremendous frustration to him.
That's something that truly bothers a race driver, doesn't it? Second, despite the fact that you're gaining points, is fairly meaningless, as that's Dale Coyne in the red, white, and blue car, and he pulls wide to let that battle for fourth place come by on the inside. Dale started in last place.
Dale Coyne, of course, used to run Randy Lewis in this car. That deal has since folded. There's no sponsorship at all in that car. Look at Bobby Rahal.
Rahal coming up right with Scott Pruitt and doing battle. Rahal seems to be running, when you consider Al's position, a rather conservative run. Is that part of the overall fuel issue here?
I think it could be, particularly at this early stage in the race. But look how difficult it is to pass here. Look what happens. He goes to the apex on the left side, gets back on the power, uses all the road to the right, goes back to the left. Now watch all the apexes he clips here. 1, 2 on the left, and another one on the right-hand side. There's very, very little room to pass anyway, even if he was faster.
Leader of the race, Michael Andretti, with a spectacular move on the start as he comes onto the home stretch and flashes past the pit once again. And remember, he's got one of our Quaker State onboard cameras, and this was the start. The green flag just down the course there. They acknowledge it. Now let's watch Michael.
Now he's catching Emerson, so he has to make a move. He can't make it, then he makes it.
Wow, just made on courage, don't you think?
Whoa, he braked very. Look at the corrections he made on the way into the chicane and then exiting the chicane. Absolutely on the limit of that car.
Some spectacular driving. There's Emerson Fittipaldi, who runs in second place. Rick Mears is third. Michael Andretti, of course, is being carefully observed by the McLaren team, doing some test sessions with him, and hoping to go to Formula One next year. But, of course, there's also some conversation that maybe that isn't so much a Formula One effort as a consideration of a McLaren return to IndyCar racing with Michael Andretti as the driver. Which do you think may be true, Derek?
Well, anything could be possible. I spent last weekend covering the Mexican Grand Prix from Mexico City, and Gerhard Berger there feels that he will stay in McLaren next year. So there really is a couple of question marks hanging over what will happen with that Michael Andretti Formula One situation.
So out in front by 2.2 seconds is Michael Andretti, but let's watch Rahal as he comes inside Scott Pruitt. Tries to fake him coming into the chicane, can't get it done. That gives a slight advantage to Pruitt. But Rahal continues in pursuit, and he's been knocking at Pruitt's back door constantly.
Tried to make that move a couple of times. That car, the True Sports car, is very good under braking, so it's a very difficult move to pull off. But we said earlier on, look how tight this racetrack is all through these turns here. It's almost impossible to pass, so that's Rahal's only chance. But it'll be very difficult unless Pruitt leaves the door open or makes a little mistake.
Michael Andretti has reported to his team that fuel is good. And what they are doing, it's in fact a lesson that they learned with that terrible loss 2 years ago at Milwaukee, is they report out the fuel situation every lap as they flash past the pits. And they compare that to the computations in the pits to what's on the car. So Michael Andretti leads the race. We asked him earlier, your team this year seems to have an edge. As defending champion, how do you feel coming here to Portland?
We had a good setup here last year. The car just felt, as good as I've ever had a car here at Portland. And right now it's feeling even better than last year. And I think a lot of it is because of the weather, because it's a lot cooler, so we have a lot more grip. So, hopefully we can chip away and get a couple tenths here and there and maybe try to keep our edge. But it's going to be tough because, you get to a wall and then it's hard to get more. And meanwhile, the other guys are catching up.
And look at there. That's Scott Brayton sideways in the track as Michael Andretti just squeezes past. Looks to be about one car width right behind Scott Brayton. Here's what happened just a moment ago. Scott Brayton battling with Scott Goodyear, and Brayton just got the back end loose. That's Jeff Andretti that came through as well.
And wasn't able to stop the car on the grass because there isn't very much grip there. We say, oh, look at flames in the back of the car. Was not able to stop on the grass, slipped back right onto the line. A very dangerous, precarious situation for Brayton.
Remember, those two had a solid battle at Long Beach as well. That little fire is just oil in the turbocharger. Doesn't endanger anything.
As long as it doesn't catch the bodywork alight. We did see, I think the fire went out quite quickly, but that can be a potential hazard because these cars are so hot and they need that airflow constantly over the bodywork to cool it down to stop it catching fire.
You also saw yellow flags, local yellows in that area, and the white flag telling them that this safety vehicle, the CART safety vehicle, is out on the race course. Remember, that's important because of the situation last week with both Michael and Mario Andretti at Detroit, where Mario came around the corner, didn't know the vehicle was there, and center punched it, and then Michael came around and got involved in the situation as well. Well, a different situation this week at Portland. Michael Andretti is in front, and he remains there. 12 laps are complete. When there is an incident on the track, the drivers rely on the corner workers and their flags to keep them aware of the situation on the circuit. Here's Jan Vikas with more.
On a road course like here at Portland, the SCCA turn workers and the flags that they use are in fact the eyes and the ears for the drivers. As a driver approaches the corner, if there were a problem on the course, the first flag that he would see would be the standing yellow flag, as Cheryl is displaying for us now. This means caution, no passing. At the next turn station, you would in fact see a waving yellow flag, meaning that there is a problem on the course, the track could be blocked. If there were a safety vehicle at the scene, the white flag would be displayed, as it is now by Dave, and if there were oil or debris on the track, the debris flag would also be shown. Bill is now also giving the third sign to show the driver which side of the track to drive to. Now, all this information is wonderful, but it is the driver's responsibility to make that decision as to how much to slow down. When you're here at a place like Portland with the wide open spaces and good visibility, it makes that choice a much easier one.
And of course, the other possibility would be a full course yellow, which puts the pace car out and slows the entire field down. As we continue watching a nice little battle between Mario Andretti, Eddie Cheever, Danny Sullivan, and John Andretti. That's 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. Let's go back 1 week, Derek Daly. The situation at Detroit. The flagmen apparently did their job. Fortunately, there was no injury involved in that, but Mario Andretti came around and caught the back end of the CART vehicle safety 1. How do you read it?
Well, I think the key phrase from Jan Vikas was when the yellow flag is waving, the track may be blocked. That's what the driver has to be aware of. That's what Mario was not aware of, did not allow for. Consequently, we saw the incident that we saw with the safety truck. I think the drivers themselves have to be a little bit more responsible under the waving yellow flag situation.
Of course, what Mario said was that he'd been through the area once, and there was a change in status of the area, and he felt that that change in status was sufficient to demand the full course yellow. So conversations have gone on. The good news is that whenever that happens, the drivers and CART get together and they talk about it to make sure that it doesn't become a safety problem. It didn't then, and that's good news, but it did affect the outcome of the race relative to Mario and Michael Andretti. Well, Mario Andretti in his 350th IndyCar start as Bobby Rahal comes up to challenge Scott Pruitt again, moving around some traffic. Still, Rahal cannot get around Pruitt. They remain in the same position. Nothing's changed up here.
The braking zone is so short in these cars that Rahal can only get a split second to try and make a move down the inside. But Pruitt's car is the equal or more than Rahal's under braking. It's a very difficult situation. We've now seen him make the attempt 3 clear times. Hasn't got the job done yet.
16 laps are complete. We're about halfway to the first scheduled pit stop. And where they schedule it as we continue watching Bobby Rahal's run with the Quaker State onboard camera. Well, where they schedule it is absolutely critical. They can't miss it at all. Let's look at Rahal. He continues to climb all over Scott Pruitt.
Rahal looks to be a little bit faster down the straight, which is probably what we expect from the Chevrolet versus the Judd. The Chevrolet is a more developed engine. But under braking and in the corners, this True Sports Made in America car is exceptionally good.
Two interesting mental attitudes here. As you see, Rahal closes up with the power of the Chevrolet on the jet-powered car of Scott Pruitt. Scott, of course, well, he's a man with something to prove. Terrible injuries last year. He's in a comeback mode with a brand new car, a development year. Truly not expected to win, perhaps even not do well, but he's had a pretty good year thus far. Rahal, on the other hand, he's the man that is leading the points, but without a win. As we move a little further back in the field, there is Danny Sullivan. He has been battling with Eddie Cheever. Eddie Cheever got by a little bit ago. And just behind Danny is John Andretti, winner of the first race of the year. Let's get an update on the Scott Brayton situation from Gary Gerald.
Well, Paul, we had an opportunity. As you know, he got restarted. Is back on course. We checked in with Dick Simon and the team. They say the car is loose. They want more downforce, but they're going to keep him on course and wait and try to get to that first designated pit time. Going to put a bigger wicker bill on, put a little more downforce on the rear, try to tighten things up and perhaps handle the race course a little bit better. You're talking about getting to that prescribed first lap stop. Not much of a window. They're trying to get to lap number 33. If you don't get there, it could become a three-stop race, depending, of course, on full course yellows.
Of course, if it becomes a three-stop race, then the 15 seconds or so that you spend on that third stop in the pits, well, it seems to be a very short time. Look at John Andretti as he kicks the back end off the track. So it seems to be a short time. At the speeds they're running here, the car running against you is getting an advantage of about 110 yards every second that you're slowing down and stopping in the pits.
If Scott Brayton is in as much trouble as he's in, that he flies off the racetrack like that and he's about to be left, I don't see any difference whether it is a two or a three-stop race. I think he should go to the pits right now because he'll only be a danger to himself and everybody else on the racetrack.
Carl Haas, the owner, along with Paul Newman of this car, Michael Andretti, leader of the race. Now a full 10 seconds out in front of Emerson Fittipaldi, but fuel certainly has to be a concern for that team. They'll watch it closely. We'll be back. Belgium driver Didier Tays, now a resident of Scottsdale, Arizona, had a fire at the back of his car, pulled it to a stop. One of the course marshals came out immediately to lend assistance, and Tays just decided, I'm the one with the fireproof clothing on. He took the extinguisher away and fought the fire himself. Here was that incident just a few seconds ago as he had a little bit of trouble climbing out.
And of course the fire completely destroys these carbon monocoques that these cars are now built of. Just breaks it up, makes it very brittle, takes all the resin out of it. So Didier Tays, in an effort to save that a very expensive car, says, here, look, come on, down here. Then he says, hey,
give it to me.
Give it to me. I'll do it myself.
Of course he is, and that full driver's uniform and helmet better equipped to handle that. Show you one of the reasons that they are so concerned. You suggested that the fire does damage the resin. Ted Prappis had a situation a couple of weeks ago at Detroit, or last week at Detroit. Little fire, little tap against the wall. The combination cost $73,000. Bobby Rahal now up behind Ari Luyendyk as he's managed to get around Scott Pruitt. And now challenges Luyendyk for 5th place. And did we see a drop of water? That's one of the concerns. You don't know if that's blowback from another car that got onto the camera lens on Bobby Rahal's car or a shower in this area. A shower could alter this race. And of course, Portland, well, they have a few showers here.
Anything could happen here, and you're right, it could alter the race. The biggest thing it will alter, of course, is throws all the fuel calculations out the window because you run so much slower in the rain. You don't use the fuel that's allotted. You can really run as hard as you like, and if it dries out, of course, you have no fuel worries whatsoever.
Run you through the entire field. After 20 laps, 23 are now actually into the record book, and Michael Andretti has led from the chicane, getting past both Rick Mears and Emerson Fittipaldi as Rahal continues to fight with Luyendyk. Let's take a look at where Bobby Rahal did a little chop running through that chicane earlier. Watch Rahal, the yellow and blue car.
Luyendyk goes underneath, and now Rahal would like to come through, but look, Jeff Andretti takes the line. Rahal thought he was going to get through. Rahal takes avoiding action, drives over the curb on the right-hand side, thought he was going to get enough room to get through, but I tell you, that shows you how fast things happen and how careful you have to be.
Also a demonstration of how good Bobby Rahal is because he anticipated that situation. And while he was, he almost loses the back end there. A little tenacity out of Rahal. Bobby Rahal, who is number 1 in the points, hasn't won a race yet this year. We ask him, do you have a timetable now for the rest of the CART season?
I think you have to take things really one race at a time, give your best on that weekend and see where you end up. And, maybe only till the end of the season, let's say where you had a 30 or 40 point lead with 2 or 3 races to go, where then the key becomes scoring points, finishing the races, not where you don't necessarily have to go out and win it, where you can have a 4th or a 5th, just so that you keep that spread, or you've got something to work with. As I say, maybe at that point you can sort of strategize, like you say. But up until then, I think you've got to take it one day at a time.
Bobby Rahal taking it one car at a time as well, as he finally comes out of 7th place and moves up to 6th place, getting around Scott Pruitt. Now, what about the fuel situation here? It is very critical. What about the Penske team? Here's an update from Gary Gerald.
Paul, that fuel issue is on everybody's mind. It's been there all day long, even though we're early in the race. Huddled conferences here near the telemetry that monitors the amount of fuel being consumed on Emerson Fittipaldi's car. They are saying that they're on target, but the key here is they've already got Emerson short shifting, trying to keep the revs down, trying to conserve fuel early, trying to get to lap 33 for the first stop. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Down here in the Andretti pit, they say fuel so far is not a problem. Behind me on the pit board, they just gave Michael the okay, meaning he's okay on fuel. They're planning for having him coming in on lap 34.
Well, lap 34 would be absolutely ideal. And by the way, for those of you who may not know Jan Beekes, we're glad to have him on the telecast. The former Indy Lights champion who's had more than his share of time behind an IndyCar wheel and a driver instructor. So we'll get a lot of good information out of him. Michael still leads. Back at Portland International Raceway with the IndyCars. You look at Bobby Rahal. He runs right now in 6th place. After 25 laps, there was a situation. Michael Andretti was the leader all the way, and we've only had local caution flags, no full course, and we're approaching very rapidly in about 6 laps the time for the first stops. But as Gary Gerald reported, Emerson Fittipaldi, there comes Rahal alongside of Ted Prappis as he continues to work on Arie Luyendyk. Emerson Fittipaldi was told to short shift. Also, Rick Mears has been told to do so, and it's really hard to believe that Michael has set the pace that he has. He's averaging 116.5 miles an hour. Well, if he would remain on that as a race record by about 6 miles an hour. He's being very careful of the traffic, but boy, is he flying. As you take a look from the Quaker State onboard camera, there's Carl Haas.
Remember, it takes fuel to make power, so Michael Andretti is out there leading the race. The Penske cars, they can adjust the mixture of their car, of the engine inside the car. They can turn it down lean. Look at Rahal trying to get by Luyendyk. They can make it leaner, uses less fuel, or they can turn it up to make more power but uses more fuel. They've a dilemma. Michael's getting away, but they can't afford to use the fuel.
This battle for 5th continues to be the best one on the racetrack, the only one at the time being. Gary Gerald, you have an update.
Paul, it's just another footnote to this intriguing situation. At the Penske end of the pits, and it's a long way from where the Andrettis are, they are wondering and skeptically saying they don't see how Michael can continue this kind of a pace, even though the report we're getting from Michael's pit is they think they're okay and on target with fuel. So there are already some opposing opinions at respective parts of the pit here as we await this first stop.
Well, I kind of share their opinion. I mean, he's setting a really incredible pace. What do you think, Derek?
Well, we've seen problems before. Computers tell lies. Telemetry don't always tell the story. Michael is the very one who lost a race here not too long ago on a Father's Day when he ran out of fuel. It's a risky business, but they're telling him how fast to go. He's still pulling away.
That was the closest finish in history, and Michael, on the final turn, suddenly began to chug. His father was right behind him and just nipped him at the line. As a matter of fact, that year they moved the starting line just a few feet down. You can still see the remnants of 2 lines down there. And if they had used the old line, then Michael would have won the thing. Rahal and Luyendyk continue to battle.
And Eddie Cheever is now beginning to come into our picture, clawing his way up behind Bobby Rahal. No, that was Scott Pruitt.
Eddie Cheever is sitting just behind Pruitt. And there's the Pruitt car. The picture, of course, is of Eddie Cheever, 10 years in the Formula One, now having a great time in the Indy cars. And there's Scott Pruitt now closing in on the back of Bobby Rahal.
This is where Rahal makes up some time on Luyendyk. We watched from the rear view cam earlier on. Look, he closes up under braking. Look at Luyendyk bob and weave as he turns into that left-hander.
We were talking about Luyendyk and his situation. The announcement was made here that Bob Tezak, one of the partners, does not have sufficient funds to continue the season unless they can get a major sponsor. And they've said unless a major sponsor comes in, this will be the last race. Danny Sullivan, a display of smoke at the back of his Alfa Romeo car, and that looks serious.
For sure, that is the end of the day. There's never that much smoke without some major problem. So although Sullivan still sits in the car, it's a matter of time. His day is over. Yeah, there the steering wheel gets thrown out in disgust, I think.
Pat Patrick in the yellow sweater watching just behind the pits. In his 25th year of racing in the Indy cars, steps down off his little stand for watching and turns his back on the car. Every week they send a new engine over from Italy. Every week they try something new. And their answer seems to be, well, it's working on the dyno. And Pat Patrick and Jim McGee and Danny Sullivan say the dyno is just not the racetrack.
The dyno is not the racetrack. It does not allow for...
Danny Sullivan trying to explain it.
He gets out, talks to his people. Yeah, the dyno does not simulate on-off throttle situations like you can in a race car. It doesn't jump on the brakes like a race car does. It doesn't cause G-forces, which causes the oil to move around in the engine like a race car does. So although it may be successful on the dyno, the only place and the only thing that doesn't tell lies is the performance on the racetrack.
I think they're learning that. Look at Ray Hall handle this car as we look back from Ari Leyendijk, and the steam and smoke and vapor from Danny Sullivan's car drifts all down the main straightaway. You'll see it when they come around to the front side of this circuit. And Bobby Rahal, that looked like he's being a little careful with the shifting too.
But he's getting closer here. He's going to be right up behind Leyendijk this time.
He's in place. He tries to the corners, coming to the inside, but no. Leyendijk uses all of the curve there and continues to hold him off. And Scott Pruitt is right there. He can make a move at any second too.
I think Rahal's car is Pruitt peels off into the pits. He is our first legitimate pit stop, because we saw Sullivan earlier on because of a problem. But Pruitt in for fuel.
So Scott Pruitt, what should be a routine stop, and it comes on the 32nd lap. So they're pretty much on their game plan. Tire change all the way around, and they don't make any moves for any aerodynamic changes just yet. So they seem to be fairly satisfied, and that would mirror what we've seen out there. It seems to be simply power that is Scott's problem, as now he accelerates away from the True Sports team. Nice little pit stop for them. They wait now for Rick Mears down at the Penske pit, all the way down at the far end of the pits, and they wait for Michael Andretti as well. So now the game plans follow. 33 laps are complete. Rick Mears has already started down the pit lane. Here's Gary.
And we look and now see the nose of the Marlboro colors. Rick Mears comes in. The fueling hose is engaged along with the vent. Richard Buck and the crew go to work. Fresh rubber all the way around. Mears adjusts the visor. No changes at the front wings yet. Now the hoses come back. They've liked the balance on the car. Off the jacks, rolling. Pretty respectable stop for the Penske team. Roger Penske not here, but he would be pleased. Fittipaldi will be in on the next lap.
15.1 seconds for Rick. Eddie Cheever makes his stop for the Ganassi team. He came out of 5th place when he rolled into the pits. And a little further down, we watch for this car. Michael Andretti. Here's Jan Beekes.
Michael Andretti brings the Kmart car to a stop. Michael now is the only driver to have led every race this year. The routine here is to get the tires changed before the fuel is done. Look for the tire guys. They're done. They're waiting now just for fuel. As soon as the fuel's done, it'll be off the jacks, and Michael is out of here. Down to you, Gary.
And Emerson Fittipaldi is now in on target. The jack's already up, and again, Rick Reineman and the other Penske team in action. And wow, Andretti just went flying by us on pit road. That speed had to be up at 120 or more miles an hour easily. Fittipaldi is now rolling. This is another solid stop. Tony Bettenhausen flies by him. A lot of activity on pit road.
Of course, Michael Andretti had the full length almost of the main straightaway to bring it up to speed as Fittipaldi cycles into the traffic just ahead of John Andretti. CART did an interesting thing here. They've done it at a couple other races this year. They established an 80-mile-an-hour speed limit during qualifying and practice, and they put up big radar guns. Here's an idea of Michael coming out of the pits as Al Unser Jr. threads in. Of course, you're a little foreshortened by the camera angle here, but boy, look how fast he comes up to speed, Derek.
The problem is, although you say 80 miles an hour, race cars do not have speedometers. So what do? Do you guess how 85 miles an hour, how fast it is? Remember also, in a green track situation, the pit lane is the racetrack, so you're paid to race. I'm not sure you can control speed.
And of course, the speed limit is not in effect during the race itself, something they only experimented with during practice. So the first set of stops are complete. We'll be back. Well, with everybody that's just having made their stop. Yeah, we've got everybody down the order. Michael Andretti is back at the front of the field, followed by Emerson Fittipaldi. But in the stop, Little Al caught an advantage moving up into third place. Rick Mears is fourth, Bobby Rahal fifth, Mario Andretti sixth, and Ari Luyendyk running just behind Mario Andretti. Gary Gerald has an update for us now.
Yeah, Paul, we're walking along, and now Danny Sullivan getting back closer to the trailer where he can get away from the crowd. And out early, never fun. What happened?
Well, like you said, when you're out this early, no fun. But I guess the engine's something in there just let go. Right coming through the last corner, just went off song. Looked in the mirror, there was smoke. Dove right off into the pits. We didn't cause any problems. But it was a great race out there. I mean, everybody was having a go. And, you know, we suffered a little bit. We were a little down on power early on. But you know, we were holding our own, just wanted to be there at the end. And I don't think we were going to catch Michael, but I don't know how many people can run that pace all day long either.
Can he last in the fuel situation at that pace?
Well, I just saw him come out of the pit, so I don't know which lap he led. The thing what Michael does a lot is he tries to get that big lead and then backpedal and then just cruise it, and it's a good strategy if you can do it. But it depends on if everybody picks up the pace.
And I remember a couple of years ago at Elkhart Lake, you did that. You got a victory. Michael ran out of fuel.
That's right, and he reversed it a little bit last year. But, you know, I don't know what's going on in there, what kind of fuel mileage they're getting, what he's really doing. His car might be working that good.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks in Cleveland.
Okay, look forward to it. Thanks.
Paul?
Danny Sullivan, by the way, is hoping at the end of this week to be in Norfolk, Virginia. Remember that he spent a bit of time on the nuclear aircraft carrier, the Theodore Roosevelt. They are one of the last ships to return from Operation Desert Storm, and they'll return to Norfolk on Friday, the 28th. And a number of the IndyCar drivers hoping to be there. The ship's kind of adopted the IndyCar drivers. We watch Scott Pruitt, and there is A.J. Foyt, who came out of the pits fairly slow. And, yeah, he's coming back up. He was in the pits for a little bit of time. Derek, one of the things that has been the center of conversation here at Portland this weekend was first brought up right after the Indianapolis 500, but has been in discussion for a very long time. Apparently, an announcement was made by Balestre of the FISA while at the Le Mans race that it was a done deal. There were going to be 3.5-liter methanol-fueled, normally aspirated engines for the Indianapolis 500 and several other international races beginning in 1993. That was immediately denied. The United States Auto Club, over the signature of Dick King, the president of USAC, put out a release and said, while that has been suggested, Tony George has talked about it, but it's not a decision that has in fact been made. They're continuing to look at it, but what it did do was stimulate more and more conversation. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? One of the arguments is it would bring more manufacturers into the sport. An argument against it is the engine isn't designed to run on methanol or to last a long time. You can't unplug a gasoline-powered 3.5 and stick it in and make it a methanol. There are problems on both sides. How do you view the issue?
Well, you're right. A lot of people thought it would be a good idea because the 3.5-liter engines are available. They have been built because they do use them in Formula One. But you're right. It's not a case of just turning it over to a methanol engine. Nigel Mansell was very pointed in his remarks recently when he said there is no way an engine like we use can go 500 miles. So they will have to change it quite dramatically. But let me just give you a couple of numbers. If you buy an IndyCar engine, an approximate price is $100,000. V10 Judd Formula One engine, the 3.5-liter normally aspirated, is £100,000. Now, you know, given the exchange rate, it's actually probably double the price. It only lasts half as long. So although it has been suggested, I think it will take a lot of study before they can make a constructive and clever and wise decision whether to adopt such an engine formula or not.
One of the things I heard out of engineers like Nigel Bennett of Penske was leave the rules alone. As long as you do, everything gets closer and closer together. Well, we asked some of the guys that would have to deal with it, three drivers, Michael and Mario Andretti and Rick Mears, about their reaction to the possibility, not the reality, of a 3.5-liter engine at Indianapolis.
I'll believe it when Tony George announces it officially. There's a lot of talk, and I think I support the idea. I'm not sure if I support it for 93, maybe more for 94, but I think for the long term, you know, the year 2000, I think Indy cars need to do something as drastic as this. It may hurt IndyCar racing, you know, in the near future, but I think it's only going to be a temporary thing, and if we can get more manufacturers involved and get more money into the series, I think it'll be, in the end, better for everybody.
I think it's going to be a tough sell, but I think it's worth trying to sell. I really do. Personally, I think it's worth trying to sell. I mean, let's face it, we have to look at not just next year, the year after. We're going into the 21st century, in a sense, with this formula. I would suspect that based on the success that we've seen so far in Group C and Formula One and the amount of manufacturers involved, there's got to be, you know, the light has to go on. You know, there's got to be something that tells you maybe that's the way to go.
To me, my reservation is I think we're as competitive now as we've ever been. We have more cars capable of winning races than I've ever seen in the history that I've been here in IndyCar racing in 14 years. And I know I'm having to scratch harder for every point than I ever have. So I don't see how we can make it a lot better. I think the key to it being the way it is today and as competitive today is the fact that the rules haven't changed. That's the secret. And that's allowed everybody to catch up. As soon as you start changing, then the teams that can respond the fastest will have the gain and the advantage, and that'll split up the the numbers again, and they won't be as competitive unless you leave it again for a long period of time. So I think that's one of the secrets.
Well, you can't dispute the fact that it is a fairly competitive season, and there's a couple of opinions. You can think of what yours may be as well.
What I like about 3.5-liter engines, there is a glorious sound from the V10s and V12s. So if they go 3.5-liter, don't stipulate it has to be a V8.
Glorious sound, which may be one of the problems. Some of the street races might have a problem with that. Let's go down to Gary Gerald.
Oh, we're in the Gallus-Craco. I always want to turn those around. It's correctly Gallus-Craco pit. There's concern here from the part of Rick Gallus about his driver, Al Unser Jr., the defending IndyCar champion of 1990. Not feeling well at all today. Got flu-like symptoms. We asked Rick how he's doing. He says, well, I think he's doing a heck of a job at this point. They're not that concerned about fuel. And meanwhile, his teammate Ray Hall, for the first time we've got a positive note on fuel. Barry Green said, we may richen it up just a little bit, meaning they can get more fuel to the engine, and maybe that motor will run a little more efficiently for Bobby Rahal.
Well, the air temperature in the 70s, nice, dense, heavy, moist air here, may in fact be helping the fuel situation for all of these cars. Out in front, it is Michael Andretti, who is reporting his fuel situation is excellent. Michael Andretti in traffic now, trying to overcome and lap Scott Pruitt just ahead. Coming, oh, look at that, look at that. Michael Andretti locked him up completely behind Scott Pruitt. Stayed it on the cars and got it back, and now he continues to chase Pruitt. Let's get an update on another situation. Here's Gary Gerald.
Paul, you talked earlier about the situation that Ari Luyendyk and the team are facing, the possibility of no sponsorship. Bob Tezak is a key principal in this scenario. Bob, what's going to happen with this racing operation after this event in Portland?
Well, we're without a major sponsor, which makes it very difficult to keep on competing and having to fund the effort out of personal funds. And we're hoping that sponsorship comes forth here. We have a couple things going, nothing hard yet, but we continue to work and going to struggle and go as long as we can. But it's
when you bought out Doug Shearson, I know that you didn't expect this. Has there been something unfortunate that's happened here that's resulted in this situation that maybe we're not aware of?
Well, there was a couple sponsors that had committed and then fell through, and for one reason or another, it's really a shame to be doing what we're doing and running as well, and right in the thick of the point battle, and to be without a major sponsor. And it's a lack of corporate sponsorship. We very bad need of a sponsor to finish the season, and I hope we can pull it off. I think we might be able to, and go on to win the CART championship.
Thank you, Bob. Let's go back to the booth and Paul Page.
Well, as you listen to Bob Tezak, you ride with the 7th place car, Ari Luyendyk. Of course, he has opinions as well. And yesterday we had a chance to sit down with Ari and ask him about this situation. Best year of his career. What about his team folding possibly after this race?
Well, it's a possibility that it might be all over for the team, because the sponsors we had, RCA and C&G, were really sponsors just for Indianapolis. And they also happened to be sponsors that were Vince Granatelli's sponsors in the past. And C&G was brought in by Andy Granatelli. So basically Doug Shearson Racing, whom I'm contracted with, did not have a major sponsor for 1991. And, you know, we went into the season knowing that it could become a problem, and it's time right now that it is a problem, and it's really unfortunate because we're having a pretty good season.
Boy, what a major opportunity for somebody, though. They'd be on a car that's right in the middle of the points fight.
And he said a pretty busy afternoon he's having because we saw a nice oversteer correction there. But, you know, I feel for Ari because from a driver's point of view, to have an unstable team behind you, it's very distracting. And to really perform to your best, you need everything going your way. You need all the confidence you can get. And a distraction like that, like what's going on with Leinach's team at the moment, is very bad for a driver's morale.
Michael Andretti in this Quaker State onboard camera is still trying to handle up Scott Pruitt, who lies just ahead there. That's slowing him down just a little bit, but still a record pace of 115.08 miles an hour. Let's go down to Jan Beekes.
Here in the Andretti pit, they're watching fuel very closely. Right here, you'll see on the laptop computer what they're doing is monitoring the fuel every time the car goes by. I peeked over his shoulder, and they have a schedule and an actual, and right now they're right on schedule.
With the kind of laps that he's turning here and the record pace he's setting, that's hard to believe. Would you figure that air density, because it is cool and fairly humid here, that makes a difference?
It does make a difference, but another thing that makes a huge difference is the car setup. Sometimes you have a lot of wing on to make the car have some grip. It uses fuel. Drag uses up horsepower. But if the car is mechanically well set up, if it goes through the corners with the springs and the bar set properly, you don't use as much wing, you don't have as much drag, you don't use as much fuel. So we don't know the type of setup that Michael has.
As they come onto the front stretch, Rick Mears has opened up a fight for third place with Al Unser Jr. Currently the number one car. Al Unser Jr. runs in third, but Rick Mears closing right down behind him and beginning to do battle. Remember, little Al, not feeling well this morning, has a touch of the flu. There's the Penske organization that oversees Rick Mears' car as they monitor his fuel situation. Next stop should come about lap 67, I would think, if they want to do it right. 104 laps the scheduled distance here. And everybody's still calculating back there. Michael Andretti is still out in front. Emerson Fittipaldi is second. In third place, it is Al Unser Jr. Fourth place is Rick Mears, and Bobby Rahal runs in fifth place. 50 laps are now complete. So what about the situation relative to fuel management and how you keep track of this entire race? As Scott Pruitt still holds up Michael, let's take a look at this track fact. This track fact is brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil. Here's Gary Gerald.
Fuel consumption is always a major concern on any road course or street circuit. And while many of the teams have telemetry that tells the engineers back in the pit area how much fuel is being used, there's only a couple of things that the driver can do here in the cockpit to try to conserve fuel. Now, let's pop the steering wheel off of the post here in Scotty Brayton's car. You see this little lever right here? This is where they trim fuel. And by turning this, every time you turn it, a driver can either richen or lean the amount of fuel that goes to the engine by 2 or 3%. Now, when we say richen, we mean put more fuel into the engine. We say lean it down, we're depriving the engine of some of the fuel. Now, if 100% is optimum, you can lean it down to about 90%. But then you're going to get in trouble because temperatures will come up and you're in jeopardy of damaging the engine. Now, the other thing the driver can do in the cockpit, down here, he can short shift. This is the shifting mechanism. When we say short shift, we mean shift early. This shows him his RPMs, revolutions per minute. If normally he would run it up on the throttle until he got 12,000 RPMs, by short shifting or shifting early, he'd shift here at, say, 11,000 RPMs. And every time he shifts, he does this, he can conserve a considerable amount of fuel. Key thing to keep in mind, fuel, of course, is power, but power is fuel. And you get only a prescribed amount of fuel at any racetrack, and you've got to make every bit count so you can finish the race.
Back at Portland, the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200, and Michael Andretti is having a lot of trouble getting around Scott Pruitt. Now, part of the reason is Scott is involved in a battle with Eddie Cheever himself, and it's a battle for 9th place. But boy, here's one very angry Michael Andretti. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Well, they're also very angry down here in Michael Andretti's pit. They've been on the radio to CART saying, give Scott Pruitt the move-over flag, and in fact, CART is waving it as much as they can. Now, in Scott Pruitt's defense, I'm sure Derek can comment on that, is that when you're about to go a lap down, that's when you really have to fight. It doesn't matter what position you're in, you got to keep from going a lap down.
Yeah, but I think you can continue that fight if you're fast enough, but Pruitt is not fast enough. He's holding up the race leader. There's no excuse for that. All he has to do is breathe the power a little bit right here. But have a look at this. Michael is so close behind him. Look at this. Look. Right up behind Pruitt. Waves his fist, does everything he can. Pruitt needs to let him by.
Albert Pruitt, of course, is in a battle with that car just in front of him. That's the number 8 car of Eddie Cheever. They're averaging 115.4 miles an hour, so it's a fairly good pace. Carl Haas still keeping track. Many of the course marshals here, by the way, are from the SCCA's Oregon region. And they've done a fine job most of the weekend. Part of it very rainy and very cold here. As we take a look at our Pioneer race recap after 50 laps of the race, Michael Andretti, the dominant factor here, though now he's trying to handle up Scott Pruitt and Eddie Cheever.
We've said so many times, catching somebody is one thing, making the pass is so much more difficult. Now we know Michael is so much faster than these cars because he's trying to put a lap on them, yet he can't get close enough to make that move.
And there you see the distance between Michael and Emerson Fittipaldi in that red and white 5 car. Fittipaldi, because of this, is closing in. He has come from just a bit over 3.9 seconds now to 2.8 seconds behind Michael Andretti. So Fittipaldi is very definitely on the charge. A good Fittipaldi story for you. Remember last week he won at Detroit. Well, when he was at Milwaukee, he had a lot of trouble with the car, and on the radio he's reporting all this trouble to the crew. And finally he said, this car is diabolic. Well, the crew after the race went to the dictionary to make sure they understood it. And he said, well, if this car is devil-possessed, let's have an exorcism. And that's exactly what they did. When they got to Detroit, the crew all each pulled out a spark plug from the engine, went through it in the Detroit River. He won the race. Now we're back to watching Michael Andretti. He tries to get inside Pruitt, and Pruitt runs him off onto the curb, and he makes it pass. Michael makes it pass. So now he's finally unlimbered from Scott Pruitt. He takes a look in the mirror. Boy, he wasn't happy with that one. Now he's got Cheever lying just ahead of him. Remember, he's the leader of the race, threading his way up through the pack. That's Tony Bettenhausen, the number 16 car, now just in front of Michael.
My word, there is no reason why the leader of a race should have to make such a dangerous maneuver trying to lap a car that he's followed so many times. I'm sorry, but Scott Pruitt should have given the race leader a lot more room a lot earlier, because Emerson has absolutely eaten away at Michael's lead.
But you see here at the same time what has happened to the battle between Scott Pruitt and Eddie Cheever. That's separated. Here is Emerson Fittipaldi, the number 5 car, now closing down on Pruitt and trying to catch the leader of the race, and he continues to close. He's now down to 2.2 seconds behind Michael Andretti.
Well, I'll tell you now, if you were on Michael's radio, you'd hear a lot more than diabolic.
Oh, look at Fittipaldi as he works to the outside of Bettenhausen. Bettenhausen lets him pass. Now he has the Pruitt situation lying just ahead of him.
And you know what'll happen now? I bet Emerson will get past in about 2 laps.
Well, Pruitt is no longer involved in a fight. Certainly knows that Emerson Fittipaldi is sitting right there. So as he closes down, let's go back, take a look at the situation where Scott Pruitt and Michael finally resolved their battle. This is on board the Quaker State onboard cam. Yanked it down a gear, brought it up over the curb. Pretty gutsy move for Michael.
Pretty gutsy move, and something that you don't always get away with. And that's why I said there is no reason why he should have to make such an aggressive and dangerous move when he's leading the race, lapping somebody.
But of course, the situation is that Michael still has some other traffic to deal with. Fittipaldi, his battle is broken off for the moment. A little later tonight, here on ESPN, Major League Baseball, California at Detroit. Coverage begins live at 8 o'clock Eastern. Stay with us on your Total Sports Network, ESPN. Michael Andretti still leading this race. He's never given up a lap as he completes the 60th lap. And Fittipaldi falls a little further backwards as he tries to handle up the traffic. Now Fittipaldi is 4.2 seconds back. And Michael Andretti has, for the most part, a clear course that rides just ahead of him. Well, Michael Andretti out in front. We'll be back. In the great and beautiful Pacific Northwest, this is the largest single-day spectator sporting event in the state of Oregon. From Portland International Raceway, it's the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200. And today it's being brought to you on ESPN by your Toyota dealers and their quality line of cars and trucks. Toyota, I love what you do for me. By PPG, world leaders in automotive finishes. And by Pioneer. When you put a Pioneer 6-disc CD system in your car, you get a lot more out of your music. Well, it's still Michael Andretti out in front. Rick Mears is battling with Al Unser Jr. for third place. Emerson Fittipaldi still sits in second. Only 3 cars reported out of this race thus far. You saw Danny Sullivan's engine failure, and Didier Tays had a little oil fire from an oil leak. Dale Coyne went out with a bad clutch. Everybody else that started is still running in the competition here, and we are coming up very close now on the second round of pit stops, and that will help tell the tale as to whether or not Michael Andretti has in fact been running nice and rich and with plenty of fuel, or whether or not he faces a third pit stop and possibly not even make it to the end of the race. Rick Mears going to take a shot at Al Unser Jr. as they come into the chicane. Drops out, lets little Al know that he's there, but he stays right on top of him. Little smoother run coming into the corner. They've got traffic lying just ahead. And little Al handles Tony Bettenhausen well, and that puts Rick Mears back. Now, let's go down to the pit area. Further update. Here is Jan Beekes.
Well, when the cars are running this close together, Paul, now is when the tear-offs come into play. We've got Eddie Cheever's helmet here. What you do is you take your right hand, you grab a hold of this ring, and just rip. It takes quite a tug to do it. These little strips of tape keep the next tear away held down in the airstream. Now, this is a lot of work to get these helmets ready, but what happens is the drivers use these actually to get over that little bit of nervousness and butterflies before the race. Paul?
Well, Al Unser Jr. works his way down inside A.J. Foyt as Rick Mears tries to take Al Unser Jr. in this continuing fight now for third place. Little Al comes onto the pit straight. Rick Mears is right there. 2 Chevrolet-powered machines. There's Bettenhausen and Foyt. They have a little side-by-side battle going right behind the battle for third place.
And traffic can be such a guessing game because ideally what you want to do, you want to sneak by the traffic just before you enter the corner so the guy behind you will get blocked by the lapped car. So it's very much a guessing game and trying to anticipate how you can make life more difficult for the guy you're racing, the guy that's behind you.
Bobby Rahal just getting past. On board there for just a moment. Fight for third continues. Little Al, not feeling well, is still having a fairly spectacular ride, but now watch the dart and the movement in Rick Mears' car as he tries to get around the Junior Unser.
We mentioned in the opening of it, Al Jr. changing the engineers and how difficult that situation is to overcome because of this necessary rapport. I said, well, if you had the ideal situation, what would you like? He said, the ideal situation is happening. My engineer from last year is building me a new car that I hope will give me an advantage.
On board the Quaker State camera, Bobby Rahal. Rahal runs in 5th place, trying to catch up to Rick Mears. Got a little way to go, but maybe in the next corner he'll have all the traffic cleared in front of him as he comes around Jeff Wood and Tony Bettenhausen. Wood, of course, replacing Mark Dismore, who's still recovering from his accident in practice at Indianapolis, and we certainly wish him well on his recovery. Bobby Rahal, clear course just ahead.
Great in-car camera stuff. Look at the helmet strap Rahal uses. That's to counteract the G-forces. And to think that you get G-forces this high on a road course really says something about the grip these cars generate.
Fittipaldi has finally closed up and now sits just behind Scott Pruitt. And we'll see if he can get past, but Scott Pruitt sits just behind Eddie Cheever, so that battle for 9th place has rejoined itself between Cheever and Scott Pruitt, and Fittipaldi will have to deal with it. Mike Roth sitting right there in the middle of that. Emerson Fittipaldi, the number 5 car. He started this season very, very slowly, but he's beginning to pick up momentum with his victory last week. We asked Emmo his feelings about not finishing in the races at Australia and Long Beach.
Mainly that our performance in Australia and Long Beach was not what we expect. from the Marlboro Penske team. But now, before Detroit already made a big improvement on the cars, and I'm really looking for the next road circuits, and we should be very competitive any of the road circuits. But again, the championship is showing as more competitive than ever. I mean, has been one winner on every race. That shows, how many good drivers and how many good cars are available on the championship now.
Well, Fittipaldi moves around Mike Groff, and very rapidly will find himself in the very same position that Michael Andretti did in Michael's pits. They prepare to refuel the car as we are now completing the 67th lap and are due for stops at just any time if they run on the game plan.
This is definitely the battle on the racetrack here. A very interesting thing with Rick Mears' driving style. When drivers come to road courses, it's a normal thing that they use right foot braking, but Rick Mears uses left foot, and I'll get into that later.
Rick Mears chases Al Unser Jr. Michael Andretti is still the leader. He's being chased by Emerson Fittipaldi and Al Unser Jr. Back at Portland International Raceway, on board Arie Luyendyk as he comes down the pit lane, and the pit stop session should be open now. A number of the crews are laid out, ready to go into action, and here is Michael Andretti, the leader of the race, as he comes in for his stop. Rick Mears and Emerson Fittipaldi both chasing this car in. Michael Andretti, no change to aerodynamics, full load of fuel. Here comes Fittipaldi, and boy, he slams it to a stop.
That's what he tries to line his car up on, because that's the center line of the pits, which gives the fueler exactly the right length of
And there goes Michael. Michael goes by Fittipaldi and back into the lead of the race. And they check the fuel. Some of that valuable fuel right there. Here comes Bobby Rahal as he rolls into the pits and makes a routine stop as well. He was running in 4th place. So stops, no full caution yellow at any time during this race. And so they have now been forced to make the first and now the second stop under the green flag. And boy, that's when the pit crews shine. I haven't seen a mistake today. They have been spectacular. Also, what interests me, Derek Daly, is I haven't seen any changes to any of the aerodynamics.
Well, that's right. That's a measure of how well these cars are set up, because usually you see them adjust the front wing. That's the most common thing to adjust. Nobody has adjusted anything. These cars must be handling well on the racetrack.
John Andretti makes his stop as Uncle Mario Andretti rolls out from the Newman Haas pits.
This is one of the most nerve-wracking times during a race when you come into the pits, because suddenly you give everything over to your crew. You just hope and pray that you stop the car at the right time, that you exit the pits without stalling the car. We've seen it so many times. An incredibly nerve-wracking time of the race.
Let's go down to the pits now. Gary Gerald.
Well, during that flurry of pit stops, Rick Mears came in behind Fittipaldi. He started to leave. He stalled the engine, had to push him back. He was here a long time. It's something that you hardly ever see happen to Rick Mears. When he left, I want you to look at the rubber that he left on pit road. I have never seen Rick Mears light up tires the way he did in his frustration to get back on this circuit. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Down here in the Andretti pit, what they have just finished doing is taking the clear hose, lifting it up, and putting the fuel that did not make it into the car back into the tank. It's about less, I would say, than 1 gallon. In other words, it only took about 2 feet in that clear plastic hose. It's the only bit of methanol fuel that's left here in the Andretti pit. Paul?
Well, Michael Andretti is in front, being chased by Fittipaldi, but Fittipaldi is a full 11 seconds back. This is the 4th place car. That's Al Unser Jr. In the stops, Bobby Rahal got past his teammate and now runs in 3rd place. Rahal sits just ahead. So a battle within the Gallus-Craco organization developing right now. That yellow and blue car, that of course is Bobby Rahal with little Al just behind him. Then Rick Mears sits some distance back behind this battle, and Mario Andretti behind him running in 5th and 6th place respectively. We were watching that caution that they exercised in the Newman Haas pit with the fuel. Very careful. You don't want to lose a drop of it. If he should have to come in just toward the end, that could make the difference right there.
For that last little splash. But let's go back and take a look at Rick Mears and have a look at what happened to him when he exited the pit lane.
Rick Mears, a lengthy stop, killing the engine. Whoa! Bury that throttle, Rick.
That's what we like. A nice dragster start. Light up those tires. Warm up those babies with that.
As the rocket came back into action. Quicker stayed on board camera with Ari Leyendijk's car. Is this the last ride for this car? Let's hope not. Leyendijk having a terrific year. Right now, though, he runs in 7th place. And he's back just a bit from Mario Andretti, about 5 seconds behind Mario. So Michael is out in front. And there's Hiro Matsushita out of the Simon team as he comes back into the action, making his last stop of the day. Now that they have made him when they have, essentially lap 33, 34, and again about 67, that should make it a 2-stop race, and they should go to the distance now.
They should, and hopefully they can. But one comment I'd like to make, Bobby Rahal had a lot of trouble passing Leyendijk on the racetrack. His crew did an excellent job because he jumped past Leyendijk.
That's Jeff Wood in the pits.
Stop. Jeff Wood in the pits during a pit stop here. But then Rahal jumped past his own teammate, Al Jr., in the second set of pit stops. So thumbs up to the Gallus Craco crew and Bobby Rahal's team.
Well, we see Carl Haas there. He's the center of another one of the big conversations, rumor, if you will, about this weekend. I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it. But the Cosworth engine, their new engine, which they say is hopefully the same level of development ahead of the Chevrolet as the Chevrolet was ahead of the Cosworth when it came out, is ready. They've been running it on the dyno for some time. They're ready to give it to a team. Some people say this man, Carl Haas, will be the team that will have that new Cosworth engine. Cosworth also hopes to have it in a car before this season is out. In fact, expects to.
That's right. That is a fairly hot rumor making the rounds at the moment. Now, this Cosworth engine, in fact, was supposed to have been ready last year. Cosworth were here at most of the races, touting their engine. There were no takers for the engine. But since then, they've done some more development on it. And I think they may have convinced Carl Haas that it's worth an opportunity. It's worth a chance. It may be more powerful than the Chevrolet. And, of course, that is what Carl Haas is banking on. That's why he'd make the change.
Rahal and Al Unser Jr. in this circulating battle for 3rd place. Just got around Jeff Andretti. Eddie Cheever is sitting back there, but he is 2 laps behind the race right now. And so he is not part of this battle. Cheever runs in 10th place and continues his fight, by the way, trying to get up and catch Scott Pruitt. And John Andretti, speaking of the family, well, a problem there as he pulls off the course. He was running in 9th place just prior to this, but whatever it was, he recognized that it was something serious and got the car off right away. This race started with 2 full rows under the name Andretti. One of them, John, winner of the first race of the year.
Well, there's something unusual we've seen this year. You don't often see that Pennzoil car stop. John Andretti really has a great season so far. What a way to start off a new team relationship with a new driver with a win like he had in Australia. But we can't see what's wrong. No smoke. May not be the engine. Could be something in the transmission.
Jim Hall, one of the car owners, and his son, and Franz Weiss representing Count Rudy van der Straten. Good effort this year. Michael Andretti continues to set a record pace, 114 miles an hour. An update now, Gary Gerald.
Oh, the story for John Andretti, gearbox. So many times you hear that on road courses. Jim Hall and the team obviously greatly disappointed. They were running in the top 10. They've been up there in points. Sometimes you can soldier on with gearbox problems, but he said we lost it all. 3rd, 4th, 5th gears, it's just no chance. So the afternoon is over for John Andretti.
Oh, that's too bad. And that's a part that, given that car in today's world, the gearbox really on that machine, not developmental. It ought to be pretty bulletproof.
Well, it really should be. I mean, we've seen the latest electronic gearboxes in Formula One. I hope they don't make their way to IndyCar racing because of the enormous expense. But a gearbox is not something that breaks on a regular basis these days in IndyCars.
Rick Mears continues his fight with Al Unser Jr. We're at the 76th lap. After 75 laps, Michael Andretti still an awesome power in this race, looking for a victory. And we'll be back with more. Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200. 77 laps are now complete. There's the leaderboard. Michael Andretti, that name has not been replaced at the top of the order. This man, Emerson Fittipaldi, car number 5, continues to try and catch Michael, but he runs a full 8 seconds back. John Andretti, you saw him just fall out. Now he's with Gary Gerald.
And again, disappointment, but there's still a smile on the face of John Andretti. When that gearbox goes away, you don't have any options left. What are the conditions like out there for those guys who are still trying to win this race as well?
Well, really, this race isn't that hard on gearboxes. I think Detroit would be a lot harder, but for some reason, we broke third gear right after the second pit stop, and I decided to run fourth, fifth, and sixth. Then fourth broke, so I decided to run fifth and sixth. And then fifth broke. So and when I went to just run sixth, there wasn't anything there. So I think what happens is one gear explodes, and the next one goes, and so we'll just have to go back and see if we can do it again.
And the next test is at Cleveland, and that's a tough place on gearboxes too. We'll see John Andretti there. Let's go back now. I think Jan Beekes is standing by at the other end of pit road.
Thanks, Gary. During all these pit stops, when they're rolling tires around all over the place, you wonder how they keep track of what tires go on the car. They have a neat way, and leave it to IndyCar racing to figure out. You fill in the L of Goodyear Eagle for a left tire, then you go down over here and fill in the second one. This means set number 2. Now in CART, they limit you to 7 sets of tires a weekend, maybe so you won't run out of letters. Paul?
Well, John Andretti out of the race, but he keeps a smile. Here comes Guido Dacco back after a stop, running a little bit late. Michael Andretti, well, Emerson Fittipaldi's closing in just a bit as they both work in traffic right now. Bobby Rahal runs in third place, and Al Unser Jr. still trying to battle both with Rick Mears and catch Bobby Rahal at the same time. But here's the leader, and look at him fight this car.
Let's go inside Michael Andretti's car, because I want you just to see the amount of corrections he has to make while he leads this race. Goes up through the gearbox, reads his pit board. Now he's in top gear. And just watch his gear changes, and just watch how aggressive he is going in through this chicane. 2 gear changes. Bang, over the curb. He'll change down here. No, he stays. This is a 6-speed gearbox. Same gear all the way through. Now he'll make one downshift up here. There it is. See how fast it is. Inside, watch the traffic. No gear shift. Now watch the curve, Lucky. 1 apex, 2 apexes, changes gear, another apex, boom, right there. Up through the gearbox and away. It's such a high level of concentration to hit all those apex points all the time. And lap cars, look at the curb here, right up over the top of the curb. One of the few curbs in Portland you can use, but a lot of concentration and a lot of hard work.
From the Quaker State onboard camera, one of the masters, Michael Andretti, who dominates this race here in the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200. We'll be back with more from Portland International. The Quaker State onboard camera, he runs in 7th place. Mario Andretti is the combat that he's trying to fight. Boy, look at me, hear him hit the brakes as he fights with A.J. Foyt. He chocked those brakes hard to get into that corner.
Whoa, and in open wheel race cars, if those wheels get interlocked, the car that's trying to make the pass goes straight up into the air. We saw how close Lionak's front wheel got to A.J. Foyt's rear.
Ari probably just now starts to breathe. Look how bumpy it is. That's Michael Andretti as he tries to move up. He's just behind Liondyke right now. And Michael has been playing very carefully. After we watch that lap with Michael, he's short shifting.
I think he is short shifting. We expected a lot more gear changes in through that infield section, but look at him now, all over Liondyke. Now when you look from outside the car, these do not move around as much, but just look at the movement on Michael's car and how bumpy the car is.
Look on Ari's car, how much roll rate you're seeing in the corner, though. That seems to be almost excessive. What do you think?
That's right. This is under braking here. Look at, Michael.
Look at that.
Right over the curve and the inside curve. Use everything that's there.
Michael comes in. He's right at the back end of Ari Liondyke's car right now. Not a battle for position, but still critical. Now you're on board, Michael, as he tucks in just behind Ari in the number 9 Granatelli machine. At the same time this is happening, Fittipaldi in the last 3 laps has gone from 8 seconds up to 7. Now he's back to 8. But this is how Fittipaldi, if he is going to, can in fact close the distance. Fittipaldi running alone. They come under Guido Dacco. Again, the Quaker State onboard camera.
Great shots here of Michael Andretti. He goes from left to right to left, trying to find the way past Liondyke.
Yeah, I see that. Oh, get out of my way.
Come on, give me a break here. I'm leading the race. Get out of my road. Look, again, he does it.
Now, does Ari see it? No, Ari comes right across the corner. He's got his own agenda. And, of course, it's an important day for Ari. He has to demonstrate something, so maybe he can get a major sponsor. So there's 2 very important values here.
Well, the reason Michael waves, one is he's waving to the flag marshal saying, hey, give him the blue flag. But another thing, he hopes Liondyke sees him in his mirror waving at him.
Yep. The blue flag, though, blue flag, yellow diagonal. here comes Fittipaldi. There you see the distance as Fittipaldi moves around Mashusta. That is not a flag that orders anything.
You're right. It's not a flag that is a command. It just makes you aware there is somebody trying to pass you. But usually there's a professional courtesy that if it's the leader, you do try and give him a little bit of room, let him get on his way.
Jeff Wood being reported out of the race with an engine problem now. Michael Andretti has just completed his 86th lap. 104 laps, the scheduled distance here today, before a giant crowd. Mike Neely, the promoter here, always does a marvelous job here at Portland International. This relatively young track is still growing and still creating some great racing.
I think Michael trying to get traffic, through traffic, trying to lap people will definitely be one of the stories of this race. I'm sure his team are on the radio again trying to get Lyondike to pull over. I'm surprised Ari, who knows he's not going to win this race, doesn't move over. But look at Emerson.
Fittipaldi has a clear run now to try and catch up to Michael. We'll watch very carefully to see how the interval continues as Michael still tries to hold up Lyondike. Same situation you mentioned before between Michael and Scott Pruitt. Lyondike is driving his own race. Michael is a little bit faster, but not quite enough faster to get past. Let's go down to the pits and get an update from Gary Gerald.
Checking in on the fortunes of Al Unser Jr. Remember, not feeling physically well, but just checked with Rick Gallis, and he says, well, you know, Kerry, he said that kid is tougher than an old boot. A Western way to express the feelings, but certainly that sums up the disposition of Al Unser Jr. Soldiers away. He said, I wish we could gain some ground on Bobby Rahal, who's in third, and Fittipaldi, who's in second, but they're hanging in at this point. Both he and Rahal, they tell us, have fuel available if necessary, but they both say they're on that ragged edge, but they think they're okay to get to the checkered flag without running out of fuel.
Well, running in fourth place, Little Al is about 3 seconds behind Rahal, but that interval continues at about that rate. In the meantime, the interval between Michael Andretti and Emerson Fittipaldi remains at about 8.5 seconds. Quaker State onboard camera. Bobby Rahal, third place, looking for Fittipaldi just ahead. Fairly long look, though. Nearly half a lap ahead is Emerson Fittipaldi, the second place car. 88th lap now into the record books.
You wonder why drivers chop over curves and drive over the top of them. What they're doing, they straighten the corner as much as they can. So we saw Rahal on a regular basis drive over the curves entering, then he'll drive over the center curve. He'll make that line as straight as possible, because a straight line is a lot faster than having to make the car go round left and right corners.
So the situation here at Portland, Michael Andretti trying to get around Ari Lyondike so he can pull away from Emerson Fittipaldi even further than he already is. Fittipaldi back about 8 seconds. Don't forget Thursday here, Top Rank Boxing, the USBA Bantamweight Championship. Eddie Cook and Johnny Vasquez at Bally's, Las Vegas, live 9 o'clock Eastern Time here on ESPN. Now, Michael Andretti started this race by shouldering aside the entire front row, taking the lead in the very first maneuver going into the chicane. He's led ever since. We're coming to the closing moments of the race. Does he have enough fuel? Can he hold on? Can he be the first two-time winner this year? Andretti has been driving much of his laps with one hand on the wheel and the other raised, trying to get the attention of Ari Lyondike just ahead, because he's been caught up behind Ari Lyondike. Michael Andretti, of course, the leader of the race, and Fittipaldi has trimmed 2 seconds off of Michael Andretti's lead in the past couple of moments. Let's go to Michael's pit now. Here's Jan Vikas.
Well, according to Michael's pit, the reason that he cannot get by these cars is he has been forced to short shift. He is short shifting just like you guys were talking about when you're watching the in-car, but he says they are so concerned about fuel that he doesn't want to take the chance and using all those revs to pass the other cars. Paul?
Well, Fittipaldi closing in, as I mentioned, in the past 3 laps, closing 2 seconds, now to 6.2 seconds behind Michael Andretti and closing in. So the question remains in Ari Lyondike. Now he waves back at Michael and says, take the corner. You've got it. There it is. Well, Carl Haas going to be a little happier now as he continues. There's Jason Fittipaldi. That's Emerson's son. So Fittipaldi now just a tick under 6 seconds back. The question remains, does Michael Andretti, for these remaining laps with 92 complete, 12 to go, Does he have to continue to short shift? Does Fittipaldi have more fuel available to him? If he has more fuel, then Fittipaldi can continue to run flat out. And maybe he can catch Michael, maybe even pass him.
Of course, we saw Carl Haas there compute all the figures. What he does is he doesn't monitor Michael's car, he monitors Emerson's car. If Emerson is to make a charge and catch Michael, then they may be forced to step up the pace. But if he can keep this gap at about 4 or 5 seconds and control the race, Michael does not need to use any more revs.
Michael Andretti ducks inside Mike Groff, who had the front end of the car wash out a little bit going onto the pit straight, and there's Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi has picked up another 1/10 of a second. He's now 5.8 back. Let's go down to Gary Gerald.
Just checking in with Chuck Sprague, Rick Reineman, and the team that is on the radio with Emerson Fittipaldi. We asked, have you been able to give him anything back? Meaning, can you get more revs? Can you get anything back? Richen it up? They said, no, not at this point. We can't. It's so close, but we still think we're okay. We can get there. We asked him if they had fuel, if they did have to come to the pits. He says it's only a splash. It may only be a half gallon left in the big fuel tank, Paul.
Well, so some fuel in both of those fuel tanks. But do they carry on board enough to make it?
The reason there's a fuel question here is the regulation states you have enough fuel to win the race if your car can do at least 1.8 miles to the gallon. That's the figure they're working to. If your car cannot do 1.8 miles to the gallon, you will run out of fuel.
And of course, the reason for limiting fuel goes hand in hand with the pop-off valve on the engine. They are trying to equate these cars. And with a pop-off valve, they regulate the airflow into the engine, and by limiting the total fuel available, they regulate the fuel, and thereby to some degree regulate the power and try to keep these cars more and more equal. Now, 19 miles to go, 10 laps. Rick Mears continues to run in 5th place, trying to catch Al Unser Jr.
Rick Mears is very much regarded as the oval master, but really is extremely fast on road circuits, and he is one of these unique drivers that uses his left foot on the brakes instead of his right foot. Normal road race drivers use a right foot on the brake, heel toe on the throttle with the side of your foot, and only use the left foot for the clutch. Mears drives road courses just like he drives the ovals. Never uses the clutch on the upshifts, and in fact he doesn't even use the clutch on his downshifts. He's able to have the timing just right to blip the throttle as he goes up gears and blip it as he comes down. Left foot is only used for the brakes. A unique situation that Mears is very, very good at.
Rick Mears fights the back end a little bit there. Michael Andretti out in front, and out in front by only 3.5 seconds. We'll be back with more. National Raceway. Michael Andretti is out in front of Emerson Fittipaldi, but the gap is narrowing down to just under 4 seconds. Chris Mears continues to communicate with her husband, Rick Mears, who runs in 5th. And here is Fittipaldi now in the same situation that Michael Andretti found himself just a few moments ago. He is behind Arie Luyendyk. Arie now should be well aware, with the leader coming past, that second place can't be far behind. How will Arie Luyendyk react to this? Remember again, Arie Luyendyk looking for some major sponsorship here today. In fact, if he doesn't get it, well, then next week there will be no effort by Arie Luyendyk. And don't forget, coming up next Sunday, more IMSA GTP competition with the Camel Continental. You're going to be there.
I'll be there.
Watkins Glen, New York. Live coverage begins at 1 o'clock Eastern here on ESPN. Luyendyk continues using all of the course that he can. And Fittipaldi driving very neatly. You notice Fittipaldi's not climbing the curbs nearly as much. Now on the pit straight, he closes in on Luyendyk, trying to get past before time runs out. 98 laps into the record book. 104 laps of scheduled distance, and Emerson's past him. So Emerson now has a clear shot, but that little maneuver cost him almost 3 seconds. Emerson is now about 6 seconds back. And there's exactly what they have to do. Now they have to catch him. There's no obstacle at the moment, but can they catch him? Well, if anybody can, Fittipaldi may be able to get it done.
That little breather that Michael just got when Emerson was caught a little bit there, lost a couple of seconds, that might be the critical factor that will decide this race, because Michael now, gain time, does not have to push this car anymore, does not have to use any more fuel.
Michael Andretti with his father just ahead of him, so he's got a little bit of help if he has to pass that next car. Fittipaldi has one more car to handle, but Fittipaldi now can see Michael. Michael is just ahead. So Fittipaldi now has an actual visible object. It's no longer a number on a pit board or a radio communication. And now there is no one in between Fittipaldi and Michael.
There's Brian Lyles, that's Michael's engineer, looking at the computer, trying to understand the information they give you, trying to see, is Michael going to be okay? Remember, of all people, Michael has run out of fuel, I think, more than anybody else in the last couple of seasons. They do look worried. They're doing a lot of figuring in that Michael Andretti pit.
Well, they're figuring down at the Penske group, too. As Michael now, let's watch the shifts again and see how he's shifting, because he's now using a little bit more of the racetrack. Keep an eye on it, Derek.
The thing about when you short shift, you have to try and make up the speed in the corners. That's why we see Michael still driving over the top at the curves, using everything he can in the corners, trying to maintain that momentum. But look at Fittipaldi. He is getting ever closer.
Remember, the closest finish in IndyCar history happened right here on this straightaway at Portland. Chuck Sprague checking the numbers. They check it down in the Numa Haas pits. Is there enough fuel? Will we have to bring the car in? Certainly, if they do, they don't want to telegraph anything. Because if you're Michael Andretti running in the lead as he is right now in the Quaker State onboard camera, you're hoping that these guys, the Penske organization, may have fuel problems too. Maybe you end up going into the pits together. Well, Gary Gerald may have an update on Emerson Fittipaldi's fuel status.
Well, it plays out, of course, right to the bitter end, Paul, and it gets more intriguing by the moment. But the Penske team showing confidence. I don't know how much of a gamble it is, but they're giving him a little bit more. They're cranking up that boost, or tweaking up, enriching the fuel, giving him the revs, and so Emerson is really in the chase now. But only a couple, 3 laps to go, or inside 3.
I would say at this point, with now 3 laps to go, that if I were in the Penske group, I'd just take the chance, give him the order to go. What do you think?
When you race for someone like Roger Penske, winning is everything, second is nothing. But remember, Emerson is still in a fight for the championship. So winning the race, you know, the difficulty is, how much do you gamble? How much do you take that gamble and try and get that race win?
All right, situation 2. The Penske organization, there is telemetry. This is a laptop computer. You see them all up and down the pits now. And they do their fuel calculations in here, and part of it is based on what the driver reports from his instrument cluster every lap. He'll tell how much has gone through his flow gauge, and then they'll calculate and recalculate and extend it to the end of the race in the computer. Can he make it to the end of the race?
And of course, every time they stop in the pits, they know exactly how much fuel went into the fuel tank, so then they can go back and make sure their calculations are in fact correct.
Fittipaldi tries to close, but can't. Now 2 laps to go. And boy, they are still trying to figure it out as they put the calculations in their chart. Also, a lot of record keeping going on there. A lot of that writing is just that. How fast did he go? What were the problems? But let's not forget, 2 years ago, Milwaukee, this driver had it all wrapped up to the very last lap. That's quickly approaching. Will Michael Andretti be able to make it to the finish of this race? Fuel, always a question here. That's Mario Andretti that is just in front of Michael. So Michael's going to get a little help from Dad if he has anything to try to encounter up here. He makes it through that sweeping final turn onto the pit straight. And this time around, he should see Nick Finoro's white flag as he comes down the line. 103 laps are complete for Michael Andretti. If Fittipaldi is going to have a chance, this is it. Just under 2 miles to go for Michael. Is there enough fuel? Here comes Fittipaldi, his final pass completely down the pit straight. He's through the chicane. Michael now works up through 3 and 4. Michael Andretti, his father line just ahead with less than a lap to go now.
Well, there's no way Emerson will catch him now with speed, so the only hope for him is that Michael runs dry. Everything sounds good now, but Michael will listen for every rev and make sure there's no because that spells disaster.
Fittipaldi came across the line 4.6 seconds behind Michael. There's Mario Andretti on board with Michael now. Let's watch and listen on this, the final lap.
Sounds good, looks good.
It was at this corner some years ago that Michael failed and lost the race. It's not going to happen today. Michael Andretti flashes under the checkered flags and becomes the first man this season to win 2 races. Michael Andretti is the winner of the Budweiser G.I. Joe 200. Emerson Fittipaldi approach the line in third place, and Michael Andretti does it at 115.2 miles an hour, a new track record by a full 5 miles an hour. Here comes Rahal. Al Unser is behind him, and Rahal trying to pick up some more points. Rahal finishes in third place as the checkers fly over his head. So Michael Andretti, there he is. He's the winner in a race that had to be nerve-wracking for Michael and the crew.
Waved to the crowd. He waved to the flagman earlier on. He waved to Lynagh earlier on. He waved to Pruitt. He waved to everybody today.
Well, Bobby Rahal, with Michael's victory, increased the race, the points. And look at this, Rick Mears out of fuel over on the main straightaway. Rick Mears, will he make it to the line? No, it's done. That shows you how close it really was.
Now there's the gamble we spoke about earlier on. How much do you push it? We knew that Penske's allowed them have a little bit of more fuel. Maybe Rick just used, well, we know he did, what, 100 yards too much fuel?
Yep, just barely made it. But Michael, well, the engine still sings. There's plenty of fuel there. Michael comes down the straightaway, raving to the crowd. And in just a moment, we're going to be able to talk to him, too, as Michael Andretti wins the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200. He's going to be a very happy man, I think, as Michael brings the Kmart car to a stop. Very casually pulls off the steering wheel, unstraps himself. Gary Gerald's right there.
Indeed we are. Michael Andretti comes popping up out of there. He was able to go through this drill at Milwaukee to get his first win. A string of different winners has come to an end on the CART PPG IndyCar circuit, and the most delighted guy is the guy that we're getting a chance to talk to right now, Michael Andretti. Fuel, a big concern. How concerned were you? Because your crew was pretty nervous.
Well, we were staying on the numbers all day, so I wasn't majorly concerned, and you know, I could tell that the other guys were having the same problem, so you know, I didn't feel too bad. Like we said before, you know, the car was working so good that I was able to conserve a little bit more, so it was great.
We understand that your dad just ran out of fuel on this last lap on the backstretch, so it's been tough and close for everybody.
Yeah, it was, but as you can see, we had a couple gallons left, so we were in good shape.
We're peeking down in here, and we see a 38.1. That would indicate there's 1.9 left in the tank.
That's right.
All right, quick math down here. Let's talk a little bit about the start of this race from the second row. And there was obviously, according to our replay, some contact, a brush there as you shouldered your way into the lead.
No, I didn't touch anybody. I didn't touch anybody going into that corner.
No contact from your standpoint at all?
Not at all.
How much of a risk did you think you were taking going into that chicane?
Well, you know you're going to take a little risk because here it's very hard to pass, so it's very important to get a good start. And when I saw Emo go to the inside to protect himself, I just decided to go to the outside, and you know, it worked out all right. I didn't feel like it was too bad because you can trust guys like Emerson at the start.
Now, in other points in the race, trying to get through traffic, Scott Pruitt first, then Ari Leyendijk. How frustrated and how angry were you then?
Very angry. If we wouldn't have won this race, I would have had a long talk with them, especially Pruitt. You know, he was definitely in my way. I mean, I had to basically hit him to get out of the way, to get him out of the way.
Well, last year, Michael Andretti got on the backup car after similar problems in qualifying in Mid-Ohio. He won. He's won here at Portland. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot. Feels great.
All right, let's go to Jan Beekes.
I'm with Rick Mears, and unfortunately, we are a couple football fields away from the finish line. You almost made it there, Rick.
Yeah, close, just not close enough. We knew it was going to be a mileage race, and you know, we had it figured close, but a little too close. Trying to chase Al there at the end. I used a little more RPM stuff than I should have. I think trying to get him for the position after losing it in the pit stop. So, you know, just one of those days.
But the points race is so close this year. It's just got to really make it tough.
Well, it does. You know, it's like I've said, you're gonna have to scratch for every point this year. It's one of the most competitive years I've ever seen in IndyCar racing. So, this hurts a little bit, but we can turn around to the next one.
Shows what kind of professional you are. I mean, you're still smiling. You waved to the crowd when you got out of the car, and we wish you best of luck next time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, it cost Rick Mears one position and 2 critical points in the fight. Emerson Fittipaldi finished second. There's much more to come here from Portland International. We'll be right back.
How to live. Part of family Fittipaldi here in Portland. This is Tatiana, the daughter of Emerson, and of course Teresa is expecting a baby. We saw Jason earlier. Emerson, congratulations. I know you wanted to repeat and follow up Detroit with a win. Second place today. A tough chase against Michael all day long.
Well, Gary, Michael was running beautiful. I mean, I had no problem whatsoever. I was a little slow through traffic, I had a possible little too much drag on the straight. I couldn't pass people. But I had difficult. That's where Michael opened the gap. But you know, Michael did a beautiful race, and I was there, right there, 4 seconds at the end of the race, and trying very hard to catch him.
How tough is it to drive when you know you've got to conserve fuel and maybe you can't push it just as hard as you'd like to?
Well, mid-race, I have to say fuel. I was using less revs. I was running the engine leaner. But the last segment of the race, when it was like 15 laps to go, Chuck called me on the radio and say, now you can use more fuel and then try. And that's when I was lapping quicker and quicker.
Emerson, we hear that you're putting together a race for Indy cars down in your home country of Brazil. Can you tell us anything about that?
Well, we're all very excited. I think it's going to happen in Rio de Janeiro. They'll build a short oval where used to be the Brazilian Grand Prix on Jacarepaguá racing circuit.
Could be very, very exciting.
Well, we're all looking for it. I think it'll be a great race. You know, it'll be great for Brazil to have an IndyCar race there.
All right, head for the podium, my friend. Emerson Fittipaldi, second place finisher as we go back to Paul Page.
Fittipaldi got approval for that event just last week, hopes to bring it up in perhaps 1992. This is the start once again, Derek Daly. And boy, watch Michael, car number 2.
What a traffic jam. He said he didn't hit Rick. Well, if he didn't, it's because Rick saw an accident about to happen. Because watch Rick right there pull away from Michael. Knew there would be contact. Maybe there wasn't, but a very daring and decisive and probably, you know, the type of aggressive move you see from somebody who's so much on top of his game, which Michael Andretti is at the moment.
Most significant moment in the race as Michael takes the lead all 104 laps. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Mario Andretti with the 5th place finish. Mario, you guys are getting used to filling up the podium with Andretti's. Today Michael took it, but a 5th place for you.
Well, it's, you know, congratulations to him. I'm really happy for him. We tried something different to try to get this thing going better, and we just lost the balance, you know, on right-hand corners. But other than that, you know, the car at least stayed the same, but it was not as good as it could have been.
You look a bit tired. Sometimes that means it was loose. Were you out there fighting the car?
Well, I carried it a little bit, you know, so it was not an easy race by any means.
Okay, Mario Andretti always pushing as hard as he can with what he has.
So for Michael Andretti, and by the way, Chevrolet, 26 straight wins. Well, we'll have a great deal more from here at Portland International. We'll take a look at the point standing, how this race affected that when we come back. Back at the start of the race at Portland International Raceway, from Michael Andretti's point of view, the decisive moment as they rolled around toward the green flag. Emerson Fittipaldi to the right, Rick Mears to the left. Michael with one car to his inside, and then a very brave and daring move. A move that made the difference here today.
And there's the gap he wants to go for, to the left side of Emerson. But Rick is there. He forces the issue. But now Emerson gets on the brakes a little bit early. Michael takes the opportunity. Bang over the curb. Little correction, another correction right there. Look at that oversteer correction. But a decisive starting maneuver.
So the final standings, provisional at the moment. Michael Andretti, Emerson Fittipaldi, Bobby Rahal, Al Unser Jr., despite his illness here today. Mario Andretti, who stopped on the last lap, as did Rick Mears, and lost the position to Mario. Arie Luyendyk. We look down now through the entire field in the final standings here today. Cars out, John Andretti, Jeff Wood, Danny Sullivan, Didier Tays, and Dale Coyne, the only cars that fell out of this race. So the race has been run. Points have changed, but not the leader of the points. At the top of the order, it's Bobby Rahal, who increased his points lead by another 4 points. He now has 90. Still chased by Rick Mears. Michael Andretti takes a jump, though, moving up to 3rd place with 74 points. Arie Luyendyk, well, there's a question. Does he continue to run now? Bobby Rahal, Rick Mears, and Michael Andretti, Emerson Fittipaldi as we take a look down the order. Let's go back down to Gary Gerald.
And on pit road, Paul, Scott Pruitt is here. And you were showing the video of that traffic jam on the start of the race. Well, here's a guy who was right in the middle of it in the second row. It was wild going to that chicane.
It was real wild. It was trying to put about 4 or 5 cars into about a 1-car place. And it was almost touch and go. Fortunately, nobody touched anybody. We used the curbs and every bit of the track that was out there. But, you know, the Budweiser car ran well today. Unfortunately, not quite, you know, well enough considering how we started. And we'll see how he goes at Cleveland.
Let's go to the drivers' meeting. Now, I wasn't there today. Jan got in there. Did they talk about the start of this race and what could happen in that chicane in the drivers' meeting?
Well, they always do. You know, Portland, it's tough going down in there in the chicane. And, you know, they said, you know, try and be aware of each other and, you know, be careful. And, you know, let's get this race.